So nice to see everybody. Is that really Kat from Kathmandu?
Wow. It is. Hello, good morning, or good evening.
Wow. It's really international tonight.
Yeah.
Okay, so thanks for being here, everybody. And let's just start with a few minutes meditation on the breath, as we usually do. So just sit in your best meditation posture, find your breath going in and out through your nostrils, and just strongly on your breath as it goes in and out through your nostrils. So now let's generate motivation, positive motivation for this evening's session. I think the purpose of my life is to lead all sentient beings from suffering to enlightenment. In order to do that, first I have to reach enlightenment myself. That means I have to complete the entire graduated path to enlightenment. Every step, all the thousands of steps that lead to enlightenment, I have to study, contemplate on, and meditate on each of those until I get a realization of that particular teaching. So in order to make as much progress as possible in this short life, I need to make sure I practice every day. Therefore, I'm going to participate in this class on setting up a daily practice in order to reach enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. So generated bodhicitta motivation, briefly, something like that. Okay, so we have three main references that are given on the calendar and like that. There's these preliminary practices from Liberation of the Palm of Your Hand from Bongka Rinpoche. And then there's Lama Zopa's little booklet on setting up an altar. There's a PDF on Kurukulla website. There's a link to it there. And also Lama Zopa Rinpoche's daily practice called the method to transform a suffering life into happiness. So the link to that is also on the website. And you can download the PDF there also. So just want to yeah, so this is, can you read that? Probably not. Never mind. Anyway, that's the method to transform suffering life into happiness. So probably get to that next week. Okay, so last time we were talking about cleaning the room as the first of the preliminary practices. So remember, there were 6 preparatory rites or preliminary practices: cleaning the room and arranging the symbols of enlightened body, speech, and mind on your altar, obtaining offerings without deceit, arranging them beautifully, adopting the 7-featured sitting position of Vajrasattva on a comfortable seat, taking refuge, developing bodhicitta in a specially virtuous frame of mind, petitioning the merit field, offering the 7-limb prayer and the mandala, and then making further petitions to the lineage gurus and so forth. So in this text, Bongka Rinpoche tells the story of Chudapantaka, the rather slow student who purified his mind through cleaning. So I was just looking at something here. Anyway, so the story went that in the city of Shravasti was one of the Indian towns where the Buddha spent a lot of time. I think he did his rains, his monsoon, his summer retreat. The monks were supposed to do a 3-month retreat it was called the rains retreat because it was during the monsoon. And during the monsoon in India, there was, because of the rain and the moisture and the heat, there were so many sentient beings all over the ground. It was very difficult to avoid killing them as you walked around. So the Buddha made a rule that in the rainy season, the monks should stay in the monastery and do retreat for 3 months. So there's a ceremony at the beginning, Rabne, I think, and Yane at the end, certain rituals the monk was supposed to observe, and then do meditation retreat in 3 months in the monastery. And there was a grove called Jetavana Grove in Srivasti that was offered to the Buddha and his monks for the rains retreat by the king there. I forget his name. Maybe a Jatashastra, not sure. So there was a Brahmin, a high caste Indian man, and all his sons had died at birth. And one of the old women told him, if you have another son, call me. So he had another son and he called him, and the old woman told him to wash the baby, swaddle it in white, fill its mouth with butter, and give it to a girl to look after. So then this girl was supposed to take it to the crossroads, and wherever they saw holy men, she should say to them, this baby pays homage at the feet of you noble ones. So the girl was told to do that, and then if the baby lived till the end of the day, she was to bring it back home. So she did that, and she told the priests that passed by what the old woman said, and then they blessed the child, and the child lived. So she took it home, and then the child became a great scholar, actually. And he was called Chudapantaka, which means the Great Road. Mahapantaka, the Great Road. Maha means great, because she took the baby to the highway. So then the Brahmin had another son, and so he did the same thing. Some of the old woman, she told him the same thing, so he gave it to a girl. This time, apparently the girl was lazy, so she just took the baby to a small track nearby instead of going to the highway. And then no holy men came past. So the Buddha, with his omniscient mind, saw that she was standing there with this baby. And so then the Buddha came by, and so the girl prayed to him, and he responded with the same words as before. And so then the child was alive, so she took it home. And he was called Chudapantaka, which means small road. So then as he grew older, he turned out to be, unlike his older brother, he turned out to be very slow. And even when he was taught two-syllable words, by the time he remembered the second syllable, he'd forgotten the first one. When he rememorized the first one, he'd forgotten the second one. So it was kind of considered pretty hopeless. So the name Chudapantaka came to mean dull, or dullest of the dull, or smallest of the small. So then the parents died, and the Maha, great road, became a Buddhist monk and a scholar, and then he attained liberation and became an arhat. So then when the small road's inheritance ran out, he went to stay with his older brother. So the brother checked to see if the young one had any potential, and he did, but it depended on the big brother himself. So he ordained his small brother, and then he spent the next 3 months trying to learn this verse. Do not let your body, speech, or mind sin. Be free of the desire that afflicts all the worldly. Have remembrance, be vigilant, avoid anything harmful and any suffering. So as he was reciting this, trying to memorize it, even the local cowherds memorized the verse, but he couldn't memorize it. So then his older brother said, you're so dumb, why did I ever ordain you? So then the kid got very upset, and he was crying, and then the Buddha came again and said, what's up? He said, oh, my abbot, my brother, insulted me. So the Buddha said, some things are praised by churls. Churl, everyone know what churl is? Like an unpleasant person, I guess. Nasty person. Some things are disparaged by scholars. Better to be disparaged by a scholar than to be praised by a churl. Anyway, so the story goes on a bit. So then the Buddha gave him some more words to memorize. Abandon dirt, abandon stains. Dulpang drimapang, Tibetan. Abandon dirt, abandon stains. But again, this proved too much for Chudapantaka. So then the Buddha said, I'll have to purify his karma. So he said, can you polish the sandals of the monks? So the tutor said, yes, I can do that. So then the Buddha said, humbly polish the monks' sandals and shoes. And monks, you must let him do this so he can purify his karma. Afterwards, recite these words and afterwards teach him. So they did that according to the Buddha's instruction. So then when he'd finally learned this second instruction, this recitation, abandon dirt, abandon stains, the Buddha said, you don't have to keep polishing the sandals. Now you can sweep out the temple. So then he was sweeping out the temple and he developed perseverance while he swept. But by the time he finished sweeping one side of the temple, the other side was dirty, so he had to sweep that. By the time he'd finished that, the other side was dirty. So he was going backwards and forwards, always sweeping the temple, reciting, abandon dirt, abandon stains. So then he thought, when the teacher said, abandon dirt, abandon stains, did he mean internal or external dirt? So then 3 verses came into his mind that he'd never heard before. Here, dirt is attachment, not dirt. Dirt is a name for attachment, not dirt. Scholars reject this kind of dirt. They scrupulously follow the Sugata's teaching, the enlightened being's teachings. Then the second one, here, dirt is hostility, not dirt. Dirt is a name for hostility, not dirt. Scholars reject this kind of dirt. They scrupulously follow the Sugata's teachings. And then the same thing about ignorance. You know, here, dirt is ignorance, not dirt, and so on. So then he tried to understand the meaning of these verses, and then through that contemplation, because he purified his mind so much by cleaning the monk, following the Buddha's instructions, and cleaning the monk's shoes and sweeping out the temple, then he actually became an arhat. He attained liberation from cyclic existence. So Pabonka Rinpoche says, by the way, this is how the verses appear in the sutra. So this is a sutra is a teaching of the Buddha. So the Buddha gave this teaching. So dirt is not the dirt on the ground, it's the dirt of attachment, and so forth. So then the Buddha told his close disciple Ananda to tell Small Road, Chuddapantaka, that he has to give teachings to the nuns. So the nuns were really freaked out by this because they thought, that's what the Buddha thinks of us. They're sending this guy who couldn't even remember 2 words. He's going to send this guy to give us teachings. So they were really cheesed off. He couldn't learn a single verse in 3 months. How could he teach us upholders of the 3 baskets? So we'll have to do something to show that we're not going to put up with such ignoramuses. So they built this huge, really high, like 15 foot, 10 foot, 12, I don't know, really high throne without any stairs. So some of them built this throne and some of them went to Shravasti and announced, come and hear this famous monk. So, they're all designed to humiliate him. So when he came to teach, there was this huge crowd, thousands of people. And he looked at the throne and said, well, they're kind of trying to take the mickey out of me. But what he did, he reached up and just pulled the throne down and he appeared on the throne. They couldn't quite figure out how he did it. And so then he went into meditative absorption and he gave all his teachings. Sisters, I took 3 months to learn a single verse. I shall now for the next 7 days and nights explain its meaning. So then for 24/7 for a week, he explained the meaning of abandoned dirt, abandoned stains. So the Bhagawan said, the Buddha said, do not let your body, speech, or mind sin. He was teaching us to abandon the 10 non-virtues. When he said all the worldly, he was referring to the 5 aggregates. The word afflicts refers to attachment, hostility, and benighted ignorance that afflicts these aggregates. So this is, so this was the meaning of he was explaining this verse, sorry, that the Buddha tried to get him to memorize, that even the cowherds memorized. Do not let your body, speech, or mind sin. Be free of desire that afflicts the worldly. Have remembrance. Be vigilant. Avoid anything harmful, any suffering. So he taught only the meaning of the first half of this verse in detail, yet 12,000 beings still came to see the ultimate truth, even after he only taught half the verse. Others manifested one of the 4 types of results by becoming a stream enterer, a once returner, a never returner, or an arhat. So these are the stages the Theravada practitioners go through before they become arhats, or before they attain liberation. It's not talked about in the Mahayana teachings so much. So anyway, so that's briefly the story. It's a bit longer in the book, but so anyway, so Babonka Rinpoche says, even through sweeping, you can get these great results. So we should always take care to keep our meditation place clean, and at least every morning we should sweep it out and dust it to keep it clean. Or even if at least once a day, if we're doing more than one session, we can also clean it before the session. So in Nepal, when we were living at Kopan Monastery in Nepal in 76, there are about 15 monks and nuns in our little Western monastic community living in the Tibetan monastery. We had our own section. But then the Nepalese government changed the visa laws, and you could only get 3 months, and then every month you had to change $100 in the bank and show a receipt to keep your visa viable. And you could only stay 3 months, and you had to renew it every month. And then you had to take a receipt from the bank to show, because we were all changing money on the black market. You could get much more for your dollar on the black market than you could at the bank. So the Nepalese government didn't like that. And anyway, they didn't want these Western freaks hanging around in the country more than necessary. So they figured they'd give them 3 months to spend their money, then kick them out. So we felt that this shouldn't apply for us. We'd been at Kopan for a few years, some of us, and we were engaged in serious study, so we thought, and living our monastic life. So it was kind of a blow, because that was our home. And so then 3 of us spent a couple of months trying to meet the Home Secretary and get an exemption for monks and nuns who were staying at Kopan, engaging in serious monastic life and serious study. But try as we might, it didn't work. So then we were given 24 hours to get out of Nepal. So we had to run back to Kopan and gather up our stuff, and then we went to Dharamsala, to Lama Yeshe's retreat center there, to Shita. But we could only stay there for 6 weeks, because there was a group Vajrasattva retreat starting in 6 weeks' time. So we had to find a place, and Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa Rinpoche had left on their on their third world tour. And before Lama left, he sort of gave me the job he said, I want you to keep my Sangha together, keep my monks and nuns together over the summer while I'm away. So that was my task. So we all went up to Dharamsala, and then I had to try and find a place where 15 of us could stay. A couple of them decided to go off and do their own retreat. So I was looking for a place for 12, in the end, for 12 of us. Anyway, it's kind of a long story, but we eventually found the broken down servants' quarters of an old Raj family house. So we rented this broken down servants' quarters, and we spent a few weeks fixing the roof. It had a slate roof. We had to do the roof. We had to, a lot of the walls had fallen in. We had to fix the walls. Then we had hired Tibetan carpenters to put in wooden floors and make us little meditation thrones and bookshelf and an altar. And then we had wooden floors put in a big room that served as our gompa. And then when the place was fixed up and we were all going to do our retreats, we invited His Holiness Sekong Tsenchab Rinpoche, who was one of His Holiness's tutors, debate partners, to come and do Guru Puja and consecrate the place. So it happened that Geshe Tekchob was doing retreat up at Tushita, so he came down as well. Geshe Tekchob later went to Nalanda. He was the main teacher of our Western monastery in France, and then he was there for maybe 10 years, and then he was abbot of Sera Monastery, Sera J Monastery in India. He passed away 3 or 4 years ago. He was a very close friend of Lama Yeshe. So he came, and then Geshe Dagi came up from the library. He was the main teacher at the Tibetan library, teaching all the Westerners down there. So we had this really nice ceremony. So just before, keeping in mind the benefits of sweeping, we had this kind of rocky path. It was probably at least 100 yards long. It sort of wound in amongst the trees, and it had all these small pebbles and stuff on it. So I got a stiff broom. You could get these brooms that were made from split bamboo. So they have all these split bamboo pieces, and it's tied together at the top. And the edges are quite sharp. So, I thought, okay, now keeping in mind the benefits of sweeping. So I thought, okay, now I'm going to sweep this path for His Holiness Sokha Rinpoche. So I went down to near the village where the path started, where he'd come from his house. And then I started sweeping all these stones and dirt off this path. And there were stones along the side. So one of the others painted the stones with whitewash. So we made this really nice path. And this bamboo it's really stiff, and the edges are quite sharp. So my hand was bleeding. So I was quite pleased with that, look at the suffering I'm undergoing. I must be really purifying a lot of negative karma doing this, So finally got the thing, and then we waited, and then we got a message that Sokha Rinpoche wasn't home. He was down on the other side of the hill visiting His Holiness. So where we were, there was MacLeod Gardens, the village, and then we were here. And then His Holiness's residence was over there. And there was another thing. So I quickly gave a cursory sweep of this other path, but it was still pretty dirty. Anyway, so Sokha Rinpoche came up that way. But, the intention was there, so I guess counted for something. And my hand healed up. Of course, that was 45 years ago. So don't knock sweeping is the message. The depth of your motivation will also make a huge difference in the benefit you gain with each stroke of the broom. So if you think abandoned dirt, abandoned stains, and if we imagine we're sweeping away the dirt and stains from the minds of all sentient beings, then that's the real way to do it, to do it with bodhicitta. So abandon dirt, abandon stains means abandon the gross delusions, the ignorance, attachment, aversion, that, when we act under the influence of those three poisonous minds, we create negative karma, which ripens into suffering. And those gross delusions are what prevent us from attaining liberation and are what keep us in cyclic existence, keep us in suffering. But even after we've abandoned those, if we've purified those and we've attained liberation, there are still imprints of where they were on our consciousness. So they're called like subtle obscurations or stains here in this verse. So abandon dirt, get rid of dirt means to get rid of the obscurations to liberation, and abandon stains means to get rid of the subtle obscurations that prevent us from attaining the omniscient mind, prevent us from becoming enlightened. So that's the meaning of that verse. So the next, once we've cleaned the room and cleaned our altar and stuff, then we have to arrange the images on our altar. So symbols of the enlightened body, speech, and mind. So the main thing, so a statue of the Buddha represents the holy body of the enlightened being, and a text represents the enlightened speech, and a stupa represents the enlightened mind. So I'm not going to, you can read that for yourself. I'll just show you though. Okay. So this is obviously more elaborate, but actually Wendy's just set this up for Guru Puja. But so you can see the statue of the Buddha there, and then you can also have pictures of your teacher. We have them up on the wall, but you can also have pictures of your teacher there. And then we have some texts over here in the corner. Lama Zopa Rinpoche, can you see them? Lama Zopa Rinpoche says Golden Light Sutra is a good one to have. Some texts there. Or Perfection of Wisdom. And then here's a stupa. Can you see that? That's a small color chakra stupa like the one we have at the center. So that represents the enlightened mind. I can't quite tell what, yeah, there it is. So basically, this says also you can have a statue of Lama Tsongkhapa to remind you of your guru. We actually have a statue of Lama Yeshe here in the aspect of Lama Tsongkhapa. So can you see that? So then, you have your offering bowls. There are 7 offering bowls. Water for drinking, water for washing the feet. Then if you had 7 offering bowls, you just have 7 water, but the third one would be flowers. We've got actual flowers here. And then incense, we have actual incense. And then light, perfume, and food. So that's our altar here at the archive. So as a minimum, they say that, a statue of the Buddha, a text, if you can get a text of the Golden Light Sutra, Lama Zopa Rinpoche says, recommends that, or the Diamond Sutra, Perfection of Wisdom text, or Heart Sutra, be quite small. And if you can get a stupa to represent the enlightened mind, that's good, small one. Anyway, so Pabonka Rinpoche describes quite a bit about the altar and how to relate to the altar and so forth in this book, in Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand. So that's the first preliminary, cleaning the room and arranging the symbols of body, speech, and mind beautifully on your altar. So the next one is to obtain offerings without deceit. So without deceit refers to an absence of two things: deceit with respect to the object being offered, and deceitful motives. So deceit with respect to the object being offered means that some faulty action was committed while one obtained the thing to be offered. So, if you steal something, you can't offer something you've stolen. I'll chop off His Holiness's head there. That is, either an ordained person obtained the thing by means of the 5 wrong livelihoods, or a lay person obtained it through taking life, killing someone, dealing out short measures, cheating someone, shortchanging, or some other evil means. So it's better not to offer at all than to offer these kind of tainted offerings. The Sanskrit offering is puja, which has the connotation of to please. So the offering you make must be pleasing to the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. How could they be pleased if you offered these sorts of things that you obtained by deceit and cheating others? All the same, if you've already obtained offerings in these above ways, it's good. So if you've already got these things by these wrong means, then he says it's good to offer them as a means to purify that sin that naturally followed the act of acquiring these. So, I don't know, maybe you can offer them. If you offer it with that motivation, recognizing the negative action that you created, and then giving it up, offering it for the benefit of all sentient beings as a way to purify that negative action. So the 5 wrong livelihoods, through which we shouldn't obtain things that we want to offer, are flattery, hinting, giving in order to receive, exerting pressure on others, and being on one's best behavior. So flattery is as follows. You compliment your benefactor, for example, in the hope that you'll get something in the return. And if they actually give you something, the act of flattery becomes a wrong livelihood. However, if you compliment someone sincerely and without the motive of trying to get something from them, and then the person gives you something, then that's okay. Hinting is telling your benefactor things like, I have tea and butter at the moment, but I don't have much grain. So in the hope of receiving a gift. Or you might say that barley flour, so everyone knows barley flour, you make tsampa, the Tibetan staple food, out of barley flour. The barley flour you gave me last year was a big help. sort of hint, hint. How about giving me some more? But if you say things honestly, say, oh, that was really helpful, you gave me barley last year. You wouldn't have any more, would you, that you could give me? Or if you ask straight out like that, then that's okay. So flattery, hinting, giving in order to receive, it's kind of like a bribe, you know. You give some trifle in order to receive something better. So that's clear, we know that. Exerting pressure is like coercing. It means pestering someone for something they don't want to give you, or getting someone to give you something they were going to give someone else. So that's not a good thing to do. And in being on one's best behavior is, pretending to be a really good practitioner, but when you're not, but in the hope that people will think you're better than you are and then feel like, oh, they should support you, you know, he's such a good practitioner. So being on one's best behavior means doing whatever you like in the privacy of your own room, but acting like a good monk who observes all the rules in front of your benefactors in the hope they'll give you something because of your disciplined behavior. So remember the story of Geshe Ben Kungyal? There's a lot of great stories in the Lam Rim. And in Pabonka Rinpoche's book, he tells quite a few stories about these different Geshes and so on. Geshe Ben Kungyal was, before he became a monk, he was, as Lama Zopa put it, he robbed by day and stole by night. So he was, he like held people up in the daytime in broad daylight and robbed them of their possessions. And then at night he would sneakily creep into people's houses and steal their possessions that way. So he became quite wealthy, and through his illegal activities, and he owned 40 fields, each of which was bought through his ill-gotten gains, and so he had so he was called. His nickname was 40 Sins. 40 Sins, because each of his 40 fields was obtained through, stealing or robbing and so forth. Anyway, at some point he saw the error of his ways and gave up all his property, became one of the monks, the followers of Atisha. He became a Kadampa Geshe, and then began trying to practice. So there are a couple of different stories, like when he was a novice monk. So in the monasteries, when the monks sit in these long lines to do puja, then the senior ones, the Lama or the Rinpoche sits on a high throne at the front, and then there's some lower thrones for the Geshes or whatever, and then the other monks sit in order of ordination. So the ones who were ordained earlier have seniority, and the ones down the other end are the young ones who haven't been ordained very long. So he was down there with the novices, and the benefactors of the puja that they were chanting were offering curd, yogurt, into the monks' begging bowls. So he was sitting down there, meditating or doing the puja or whatever, and he could hear them coming down the line. They're going, shlom, shlom, putting a good amount of this rich, heavy, thick yogurt into the bowls. And he was sitting there saying, oh no, they're giving too much away to the monks up there, but there won't be any left by the time it gets down to me. So this is what he was thinking. He's going to miss out because they're giving too much to the others. So then he looked at his mind and checked his motivation, and he realized that he was completely under the control of greed and attachment. And he was just so attached to this yogurt. So he got his begging bowl, his food bowl, and turned it upside down. So when the servers got down to him, they were saying, "Turn your bowl up the other way." He said, "It's okay, I've already had mine." So he punished himself in that way. He's punished his self-cherishing mind. So that was, that was one way that the Kadampa Geshis practiced. If they found themselves engaging in negative thinking, then they would punish their ego and attachment in some way, their ego attachment, their self-cherishing in some way like that. They would deprive themselves of something in order to punish their negative mind. So another time, because he'd spent so many decades as a thief, he still had this habit. So one day he was invited to a family's house to do prayers and to do pujas for someone who'd passed away. So they set him up in their living room. So the way there's a lot of the Tibetan houses were set up in the villages, and the Sherpa houses you'll see in the mountains in Nepal, there's often just one big room, and all the way around the edges there are benches. If you've seen the basement room at Kurukulla Center, you see we built some benches around the edge, around the three walls, so that sort of becomes like can become a dormitory. That you can people can sleep on these long benches, head to toe. So you can fit quite a few people on that way. So these would be around 2 or 3 of the walls, these benches, and they have Tibetan carpets on them. And then people roll up their bedding when they get up in the morning. And then on one side, there'd be a stove, and with a bowl with the food and stuff in. Some of the food they hang in sacks off the rafters, so it's harder for the mice and rats to get it. And some they keep in sealed containers on the floor in different ways. So and then there's this this stove that the whole room is kind of set around, and it keeps the room warm. Then in the downstairs, this is upstairs usually. Downstairs, often there are very steep steps leading up into this, and then downstairs they just have straw and stuff. And it's where they keep the animals, like they bring the yaks or the cows or whatever, goats in at night. So they keep them in the basement, and then the heat from the animals also keeps the house warm. So it's this kind of integrated system. Anyway, so they set him up next to the fire to do his prayers and stuff, and they all went out in the fields at work to do their work. And then all of a sudden they heard him yelling out, come quickly, there's a thief in the house." So they ran in, and they're looking around and say, where? They could see him. And then when they looked closely, he was holding his right hand with his left hand, and his left hand was in the tub with the barley. So because of his thieving tendencies, his hand had automatically gone into the barley to kind of rip some off. And when he saw his hand there, he caught it like that with his other hand, and then he turned himself in to the owners. And that was in an attempt to damage his reputation, so that people wouldn't think that he was this holy monk doing these prayers, but could see that he was really a thief in disguise. So that was another way of punishing his ego, just by calling himself out like that. So another time he was in retreat, and he was one morning, he got a message that his benefactor, the person who was supporting him in retreat, was going to come and visit him later that day. So he got up early, and then he really cleaned his altar. And okay, we're talking wrong livelihood. So he cleaned his altar, he set everything up nicely, and filled all the water bowls properly. And then everything was really nice and pristine. And then he went, and then he sat down on his meditation cushion, and he checked his motivation. And he saw that he'd really just set up this altar and made everything really clean, not as a pure offering to his guru or the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, but in order to impress his benefactor so that he would keep supporting him and give him more money and more food. So then he reached down onto the floor, dirt floor in his cave, and he picked up a handful of dirt and he threw it on his altar. So he threw dirt so that when his benefactor came, he'd see this terrible, filthy altar, and so that was how he punished his ego that way. So after he threw the dirt, then he sat down to do meditation, and quite a long way away, many miles away, his teacher, the great Indian yogi Padampa Sangye, I'm not sure if I mentioned Padampa Sangye to you. He was a great yogi who lived at the same time as Milarepa, and they kind of sparred off each other to see who could perform better miracles. So he came from India, and he stayed in southern Tibet, a place called Tingri, for a while, and he gave a very famous teaching called 100 Verses of Advice, or the advice of Padampa Sangye to the people of Tingri, something like that. So there's a Shambhala published a book of called 108 Verses of Advice, or something like that. So that'd be nice to do a series on at one time. Those great little teachings from Padampa Sangye. So anyway, Padampa Sangye was giving teachings when all of a sudden he stopped mid-sentence and got this kind of strange smile on his face. And the students who were taking teaching said, "What happened? Why did you stop? Why are you smiling?" And he said, this morning, my student, Geshe Ben Kungyal, he made the purest offering in all of Tibet. And they said, "Wow, what did he do?" He said, "He threw dirt in the mouth of the 8 worldly dharmas." So everyone knows the 8 worldly dharmas? The 8 worldly concerns. These are there's more than 8 ways we waste our perfect human rebirth, but these are this book by Lama Zopa Rinpoche called How to Practice Dharma. The subtitle is Teachings on the 8 Worldly Dharmas. So these are the things. So, we have attachment. There's sort of 4 pairs of opposites. We're attached to receiving material things, and like presents on our birthday or Christmas, or just getting stuff anyway. And so we're happy when we receive things, and we're unhappy when we don't. So if we're expecting a gift and someone doesn't give us, we kind of So then there's attachment to feeling good and to things going well, and aversion to feeling bad and to things not going well. And then we're attached to praise, people telling us how good we are, and we have aversion to criticism, so people telling us how bad we are. And we have attachment to fame, to having a good reputation and being well thought of in the world. And we have aversion to notoriety, to having a bad reputation, people speaking badly of us. So these are the four attachments, to material, to getting material things, to being well and, feeling good, to being praised, and to having a good reputation. These four attachments, and then these four opposites, the aversion to their opposites. So these are the things that, and things similar to those are what drive our whole life. Always wanting more, wanting better, and being unhappy when we don't get what we want or when we lose what we have. So if we really think about these things, you'll see how our life is totally preoccupied with worldly concerns, such as those 8 things, for the 4 attachments and the 4 aversions. And, if you really want to know how to practice Dharma, we have to avoid those 8 worldly dharmas. And this is, in this book, Lama Zopa Rinpoche explains in great detail how all that works. It's an amazing book, How to Practice Dharma. So in this case, Geshe Ben Kungel set up his altar when he heard his benefactor was coming, because he wanted the benefactor to praise him, to think he was so good, Then when he saw his worldly motivation, he had to apply the antidote and to destroy his good reputation. So he threw dirt all over the altar, and Padampa Sangye said, could see what happened with his clairvoyance, and said to the students he was teaching, so, Geshe Ben Kungel made the purest offering in Tibet. Normally we wouldn't think throwing dirt all over your altar is a very pure offering, but because of his motivation to punish his attachment and his worldly mind, and to punish his self-cherishing, then that offering, that action became pure offering. Throwing dirt in the mouth of the 8 worldly dharmas. So also with offering water, it was Geshe talking about this a few weeks ago. Some people were talking about offering water, why we offer water. It says, Pabonga Rinpoche, so we offer water because it's, so far, it's cheap and plentiful. And so when we offer water, there's really no danger of attachment being hung up in the water. We have plenty of water, so it's not like we're going to put up our water bowls and fill them with water, and then feel regret, thinking, "Oh, I shouldn't have offered that water. Now what am I going to drink?" Isn't it? It's not going to happen. Not yet. Maybe in 50 years it'll be different, but at the moment we still have plenty of water. It says in Tibet, the water has a lot of inherent good qualities that make it worth offering in itself. It said the water in Tibet had 8 properties. Cool, delicious, light and soft, clear, odorless, easy on the throat, and kind to the stomach. That's the water that has these 8 properties. Cool, delicious, light and soft. Could be an ad for Dasani. Cool, delicious, light and soft, clear, odorless, easy on the throat, kind to the stomach. Brought to you by Coca-Cola. Anyway, so water is a good thing to offer. It says there are some karmic benefits to offering water, the 8 corresponding benefits. Your ethics will be pure because the water you offer is cool. Because it's also delicious, you will come to enjoy most delicious food. The lightness of the water means your body and mind will become fit and pliable. Pliable, that means when we approach the higher stages of meditation, our body is very light and flexible. And ultimately, if we attain shamatha or single-pointed concentration, we can obtain the siddha, the accomplishment of being able to fly. The water's softness results in a gentle mind stream. A clear mind results from the water's clearness. Its odorlessness will purify you of karmic obscurations. And because the water does not hurt your stomach, your body will be free of illness. Its being easy on the throat means you will come to have pleasant speech. So these are the corresponding karmic benefits of offering water that has these 8 properties. Okay, so you can read more about that here. This is chapter 4, day 4. So then the next one is the third preparatory right, third preliminary practice, is adopting the 8-featured sitting position, posture, or whatever posture is convenient for you on a comfortable seat, and then taking refuge, developing bodhicitta and so on in an especially virtuous frame of mind, making sure that these practices properly suffuse your mind stream. So the rear of your meditation cushion should be slightly raised and the front slightly lower. So, you know, if you sit on one of these, on a zabuton, like this, these big square cushions like we have at the center. So if you sit on those, and then you have a small cushion under your backside, then that accomplishes that. So one thing is, if you sit on a little cushion like that with your backside higher than your knees, then it's easier to keep your back straight, which is of the different 7, it says 8 features sitting posture here, 7 or 8 aspects. It's easier to, keeping a back straight is the most important of all the different aspects of the meditation posture. And also it's easier on your knees if and your hips if you're sitting on a small cushion under your backside. So the rear of your meditation cushion should be slightly raised and the front slightly lower. He says this has a profound tantric significance. He doesn't say what it is. It will also prevent pain in your buttocks and other problems while you sit in meditation for long periods. So then, you cross your legs. If you're sitting in a chair, which is fine, then you need to keep your back straight and not lean back in it, and have your feet flat on the floor. Or if the seat is too high, then put a cushion under your feet, but keep your feet flat, not sort of hanging down. So your legs you can do in the Vajra posture, the full lotus. So you'll see the statues of the Buddha with his right leg. These are actually my arms, but I'm demonstrating. So you put the back of your left foot on your right thigh, and the back of your right foot on top of your left foot. It crosses in front. So if you look at the statues of the Buddha or other deities in this Vajra posture, in this full lotus position, you see the right leg is in front of the left pretty much every time, I think. I think in yoga, sometimes when I see people showing the yoga position, sitting like this, they put their left leg in front. I'm not quite sure what the reason for that is. So your legs crossed. If you can't do the full lotus, you can do a half lotus. So in that case, your the back of your left foot would be on your cushion, and then the back of your right foot would rest on the top of your left thigh. So it's a half lotus. So either of these positions are good and better than just the regular cross-legged position, because the regular cross-legged positions, it's quite easy for you, to compress your sciatic nerve and you get pins and needles, or your legs can go numb, or just becomes uncomfortable. So if we're going to try and sit, train our body to sit for an hour or 2 hours, and if we're doing a retreat, then usually if we're doing a longish retreat, then we start by doing short sessions, 10-15 minutes, but then gradually we build up for the main part of the retreat, where we're doing 2 or 2.5 hour sessions. So if we can remain immobile, certainly as far as our legs are concerned, for that 2 hours, 2.5 hours, then it's easier for us to develop concentration. If we're having to move around all the time and keep adjusting our legs and stuff, then it's much harder to develop any kind of concentration. So learning to sit in either full or half lotus position is it's a good skill to have. But if you can't do either of those, you can just sit in the regular cross-legged position and hope you don't get too much in the way of pins and needles. Or you can also sit in the Tara position, where the left leg is tucked right in, and then your right leg is a little bit extended out. Like if you see the statues of green Tara. There's one over there, but you can't see it. But you see Tara? You see her right leg is kind of sticking out a bit. When we bought this house for the Lama Yeshe Wisdom Archive about 10 years ago, that Tara statue was sitting in the basement. The previous owners had bought it somewhere in Florida or some shop somewhere, and They just left it in the basement. She was sitting on the floor, which really made us quite uncomfortable. So I think we picked her up and put her on something. But then she didn't have, I don't know how much you can see. She didn't have that crown. I don't know if you can see the crown. That was made by the guy, Jumpel, who decorated the stupa, Kalachakra stupa, in the backyard of the center. He made this beautiful crown and he painted her face, and it really transformed her. So that's the Tara position. So the left leg is tucked in and the right one is sort of sticking out a little bit. So that can be a comfortable position too, if you're having trouble with your knees or your hips sitting cross-legged. So the hands are, we keep our hands in the lap. So the right is on top of the left and the tips of our thumbs touch. So that's the recommended position. And then our arms are a little bit, slightly rounded, held out from the sides a little bit. And our hands are in our lap like this. So then our shoulders should be parallel with the floor, not one higher than the other. It should be at the same level. And our neck should be slightly bent forward. Not like that, not hanging down like that, just slightly bent forward. So that if you looked straight ahead with your head bent forward, your gaze would hit the floor about 3 feet in front of you. And then our lips should be lightly closed, and our teeth, your lower jaw should be just relaxed, and then the tip of your tongue rests against the front of your hard palate, just behind your top teeth. They think of everything. The reason given for that, for your tongue resting against your top teeth, is when you become more accomplished in meditation and you're developing deeper states of concentration, the flow of saliva can increase. So if your tongue is resting against your hard palate behind your top teeth, this extra saliva you produce will just run down your throat, and without you having to swallow all the time. And having to swallow will also interrupt your concentration. So, lower jaw relaxed, teeth, not clenched, just slightly closed. Tip of your tongue like against the front of your hard palate. And then your eyes, ideally your eyes should be just slightly open. Not, if we close our eyes completely, maybe we think, oh, my eyes are closed, time to sleep. Because that's usually what happens when we close our eyes. When we go to sleep with our eyes closed. So closing our eyes can remind us, oh, sleepy time. But that's a big hindrance in meditation. We don't want to sleep through our meditation. So better to have your eyes slightly open. But for beginners, if our eyes are slightly open, we maybe get distracted by visual objects in front of us. So, at the beginning, it's probably better to close your eyes, or or if not completely closed, just very slightly open. So I think, so that's, so those are the, is that right? Yeah, so those are the 7 postures, the legs, the hands, the shoulders, the neck, the eyes, the tongue, why am I not getting 7? Oh, teeth, lips. Okay, so teeth, lips, tongue, head, shoulders. So those are 7, but here he talks about 8, the 8th being the breath. So, when we sit in this posture, the first thing we do, as we do at the beginning of these sessions, we do just a meditation on the breath. So by doing meditation, so sometimes that's counted as the 8th feature of the Vairocana sitting position. Did I talk about Vairocana last week? The Vairocana is one of the 5 so-called Dhyani Buddhas, or the five Buddhas of the fully purified aggregates, or fully, do we talk about that? So a sentient being has 5 aggregates. The aggregate of form, which is the body, the physical aspect, and then 4 mental aggregates. Feeling, cognition, compositional factors, and consciousness. So these 5 factors are what we are, what make up a sentient being. So we have a body and a mind. So the body is, and they're called aggregates because each of these 5 things is an aggregate of many smaller parts. It's a collection of parts. And, feeling, and so there are, and our mind is also kind of made up of 2 things: the primary consciousness and mental factors. So the primary consciousness, so the aggregate, the aggregate of consciousness is the 6 there are 6 primary consciousnesses. There are the consciousnesses of the 5 senses: sight, smell, hearing, taste, and touch. And then the 6th one is the mental consciousness. So these are the 6 principal consciousnesses. And there are 51 secondary minds, or 51 mental factors. So feeling is one of them. So that's the 2nd aggregate. And cognition is another one. It's a 51. And then the other 49 are subsumed in the compositional factors. I don't know why 2 of them are singled out like that: feeling and cognition. I'm sure there's a reason. I've never actually tried to look it up, but maybe someone can look it up and tell me next week. So we sit in this. So Vairocana is the Buddha of the fully purified skandha, or aggregate of form. So he sits in this Buddha sits in this position. And this position was made famous, I guess, in Tibet by Mapa, Mapa the translator, who was the guru of Milarepa. And Mapa was a disciple of the great Indian teacher Naropa, who himself was a student of the Mahasiddha Tilopa. So there's this lineage: Tilopa, Naropa, Mapa, Milarepa, and then Gampopa and Rechungpa, Milarepa students, and that formed the Kagyu school of Tibetan Buddhism. So, there are these 4 schools of Tibetan Buddhism. There's the 4 main schools. There's the Nyingma, the ancient one, the first one, was founded in around 750 when Padmasambhava came from India to Tibet to dispel hindrances to the spread of Dharma through his powerful tantric activities. And also the abbot, the Indian abbot, Sangharakshita, came and he established the monastic order. He ordained first 5 Tibetan monks and they founded the monastery of Samye in southern Tibet, near the Brahmaputra River, the Sangpo, as it's called in Tibet, runs into India and empties into the Bay of Bengal, the Brahmaputra. So that, like many other great rivers of Asia, has its origin in Tibet. And Samye was near the banks of that river. So that was the Nyingma school, the ancient order, and then came the Kagyu and Sakya schools a few hundred years later, and then a couple of hundred years after that came Lama Tsongkhapa and the Gelug school, or Gelug tradition, which is our tradition that we follow. But these similarities between these 4 traditions are much greater than their differences. They have different way of teaching and different meditation techniques. And actually, there are many other smaller schools that came and went over the centuries in Tibet. So these 4 are the main ones that have endured to this day. Okay, so so then there's a long section on them. So once we sit in this position and we take refuge. So a long section on refuge I'm not going to go into here. And then a long section on the 7-limb prayer. Not going to go into that. But if you could really read these 3 chapters, day 4, day 5, and day 6, so that covers all these preliminary practices for setting up a daily practice if you want to follow this way of doing it. Okay, so I think that's all from Pabonka Rinpoche. The other thing is, I just have a quick look at this, the preliminary practice of setting up an altar. So there's, in the calendar and on the Kurukulla homepage under resources, there's a link to the altar setup. So we had a quick look at that before. So it's not just setting up an altar sort of like mechanically. We need to know what we're doing and do it with proper motivation. So as Rinpoche says here, creating your own practice space. So as I said last week, if you can set aside a room as your meditation room, and you can keep your Dharma books there and just make it like a really sort of sacred space in your house. That's ideal. If you can't have a room, if you can maybe set up a corner of a room and get some kind of screen, sort of screen it off so it becomes its own self-contained space with your altar and your books there, and your meditation cushion and your little meditation table, whatever. Then that's good. Otherwise, if you can't create even that sort of space, then just if you just, like, maybe you can't set up an altar at all. Maybe your roommates or parents or whoever will freak out. But ideally, we should have some kind of space that's, when you go in there, when you sit there, your mind just automatically goes into that sort of Dharma practice mode. So the Rinpoche also says here, the Tibetan Buddhist altar contains a statue or a photo of the Buddha, Shakyamuni, or other deities like Tara or Chenrezig or Manjushri, deities with whom you feel a connection. But again, when you put a picture of the Buddha, you put a picture of your teacher, you put a picture of your meditational deity, remember that these are different aspects of really the same person. These are aspects of the enlightened mind, of the guru omniscient mind, manifesting in these different ways according to our karma to make a connection with us and to help us in our practice. Photographs of your spiritual teachers may be included here as well. So traditionally, statues of the Buddha and other deities are placed at the center of the altar with pictures of your teachers to either side. Or if you can do it here, if you have a wall, then you can put the pictures of your teachers on the wall above the statues of the Buddha in the middle. And if you have a bunch of statues and you have a longer altar, then of course you can just arrange them all there. And sometimes you can build little tiers on your altar. So with some, if you have a statue of your teacher, you might put that one higher than the statue of the Buddha. But anyway, you figure it out. So statues of the Buddha and other deities need to be filled with certain mantras and incense and blessed. So there's an elaborate way of doing it. There's a simple, so usually, we just ask Geshe-la to do it. But there's, at the end of this text, there's a method for blessing your own statues, but you need to get the mantras that go inside. So they're saying that you can get them from the FPMT. So probably, I'm not sure, now the FPMT store has basically gone digital. They're not sending out physical objects anymore. So, but they probably have PDFs of the mantras that you need to put inside the statue. So they could probably send you that, and then you print it out and roll it up according to the instruction at the end of this text, and then you can bless your own statues. Or you can ask Geshe-la to do it and make an offering of $10. But the statues need to be filled. You don't put an empty statue on the altar. If you like, you can wrap the statue in a kata, one of those offering scarves too. So then to the right of the Buddha, as you face the altar, place a stupa, and which symbolises the enlightened mind of the Buddha. It doesn't have to be an expensive one, a simple clay stupa, or even a photograph of one of the many amazing stupas from around the world, like the Kalachakra stupa at Kurukulla. You could put a picture of that up there. we were going to make replicas of it. And in fact, we got as far as making, there's one at the center, a replica of the Kalachakra stupa. There's a maybe 18-inch replica that was made by the artist who decorated the Kurukulla, the stupa at Kurukulla Center. But somehow we never went ahead with making molds from that and reproducing it. And then this Kalachakra stupa that I showed you before was made by Lilian Tu, the feng shui expert from Malaysia. She made a bunch of those. She was going to build one at her house in Kuala Lumpur. I'm not sure if she ever did, but she made these small models and she gave me one. She was a disciple of Choden Rinpoche. That's Choden Rinpoche there above my hand. See? He came to Kurukulla Center many times, well, 4 or 5 times anyway. He passed away 4 or 5 years ago, maybe now. He came and consecrated our stupa, and so Lillian came at that time. So to the left of the Buddha, you place, as you're facing the altar, you place a Dharma text. It doesn't have to be written in Tibetan or Sanskrit. It can be a Dharma text in any language. Lama Zopa Rinpoche recommends the Sutra of Golden Light or any other Dharma text. They're often wrapped in yellow cloth or brocade before being placed on the altar. So the cloth used to wrap the text should be neat, new and clean, and never used for anything in the past except for wrapping texts. So, you can't get one of your old shirts and cut it up and then wrap a text in it, or, underwear, or,
Is it proper to wrap the text in a kata? Or
yeah, I was just going to say, you could wrap it in the kata if it's clean. Generally the cloths that we wrap texts in, they're square, and then they have a kind of patch on one corner and a tie coming off it, like a string or a narrow piece of cloth. So then you put your text and then you wrap the cloth and then you tie it around. So you can buy those text covers in a lot of Tibetan shops or online or everywhere. So we have some texts up the top there, wrapped in, can you see them? They're wrapped in orange cloth up there. I mentioned them last time, I think. There's Lamrim Chenmo, the great Lamrim, and Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand, the Tibetan text. That's what I said last time. If you die with those in your room, if you die in a room where those are, you won't get reborn in the lower realms. Yeah, so he says that if your altar consists of 3 or more levels, then the text should be placed highest, then the Buddha statue next, and the stupa underneath that. Shakyamuni Buddha should be the central figure. And if you have other images, place them from uppermost on your altar to the lower in the following order: your root gurus, your yidams, your tantric deities, starting with highest yoga tantra and then going down through the 4 classes, and then dakinis and protector deities. So we don't usually have statues of all those things. So then, as far as the offerings are concerned, so it's good to do the offering bowls every day, and to offer and to light incense every day. So incense you can just put in such kind of burner like that. You can put that on the floor here. I think we have another one. I think Wendy swiped it. Anyway, you keep your incense burner box on the floor in front of your altar, and so do water bowls every day, and offer incense and lights. So your lights can be electric light. We have some Lotus electric lights up on the altar, and we also do tea lights. So you can see there's tea light burning there. We put the tea lights in coloured glass crystal containers or something, so it just makes it even more of a special offering. So the things with the offerings, if you can make it as beautiful and attractive as you can, the more you feel it's attractive, the better an offering it is. So there's a special way of, and if you can offer fresh flowers every day, that's good too. And if you can't do all these things, then we do the best we can. So there's a special way of filling the offering bowls. I think it's explained in some detail here in this altar setup text. So I think if you can read that, because we don't have time to go into all these details here. So it talks about how to fill the water bowls, how to empty them, and so on and so forth. Then there's Rinpoche's advice on how to make offerings, or the practice of making offerings. So it's not just a question of, dumping it on the altar and saying, okay, Buddha, there you go, and then walking off. We have to do more with our mind. And of course, everything we do should be done with bodhicitta, for the, in order to reach enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. So there's quite a long section on how to make offerings. And then there's some notes. So one of the preliminary practices we do in our tradition is we do 100,000 of certain activities. So we do 100,000 prostrations. So it's 100,000 full-length prostrations. And we do that in conjunction with the practice of the 35 Buddhas. So you recite the names of 35 Buddhas and the preliminary prayers and the finishing prayers for that. And then you do 100,000 prostrations reciting the names of these Buddhas. So full-length prostrations, 100,000. So that's one preliminary practice. Then there's 100,000 water bowl offerings, 100,000 tsatsas. So you know what a tsatsa is? I don't know if you can see. There's a big one there. See that golden votive tablet that's made from hydrastone, from a mold. So usually when we do the tsatsa offerings, we just make small ones, this big. So it can be a stupa, or it can be the Buddha, or it can be any holy object that you feel connection with, or that you can get a mold of. So we do 100,000 of those, 100,000 prostrations, water bowls, 100,000 mandala offerings. Then for purification, we do 100,000 long Vajrasattva mantras. We do 100,000, it's called Samaya Vajra or Damsik Dorji. So that's especially for purifying broken tantric vows and commitments, the Samaya Vajra, Damsik Dorji. Then there's the Dorji Kadro, Vajradaka fire puja. So there's a special little fire puja we do where we burn black sesame seeds. We symbolize our negativities. So there's a whole practice of that. We do 100,000 guru mantras. So for that practice, we recite the Miksema, the 5-line praise to Lama Tsongkhapa 100,000 times. We may say in the context of the Lama Tsongkhapa Guru Yoga practice, and 100,000 refuge prayers. So you can do, Namo Guru Be, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dhammaya, Namo Sanghaya in Sanskrit, or you can do it in Tibetan, Lama Lakep Suchiwo. 100,000 of those. So I think that's about 9 preliminary practices. So if you're going to do like a 3-year retreat on tantric deity, maybe Yamantaka or Haruka Chakrasamvara or Guya Samaja, but these are the 3 main highest yoga tantra deities, or Kalachakra, different highest yoga tantra retreats. Then before starting the retreat, it's good to do these preliminary practices, maybe not all 9, but a bunch of them, just as sort of to soften your mind up, so that the retreat on the actual deity will be more successful, and you may even be able to communicate with the deity by the end of 3 years. Who knows? So these preliminary practices can be done like that, or some people do them at home. They do a session in the morning, and then they go to work, and then in the evening they do another session. If you're doing, most of these practices would take from 6 weeks to 3 months, depending how quickly you recite, or depending how much time you spend doing the meditations and visualizations and so on. But generally, 3 months is the most time you'd need to complete these, and some of them can be done more quickly even, So, like I say, 6 weeks or even a month. So people maybe do 1 or 2 sessions a day over 6 to 12 months. And so they finish one preliminary, then the next year they do another one. So over 9 years, they do them all. So that'd be amazing. While still going to work, but if you do those, then you need to do it every day, and you have to do it in the same. You have to do it on the same cushion, and you're not allowed to move your cushion for the duration of the retreat. So there's that consideration as well. There's a book, Lama Yeshe's teachings on Vajrasattva, called Becoming Vajrasattva, published by Wisdom Publications. And there's quite a long section on the what do I say, not the rules exactly, but the way to do a retreat. Lama Yeshe explains a lot of detail about, do's and don'ts of retreat. So here in this text, this altar setup, there's guidelines for completing 100,000 water bowl offerings. So then there's an elaborate offering practice that Lama Zopa Rinpoche has put together to accumulate the most extensive merit. So there's a lot in this little text on altar setup and water bowl offerings. So I really suggest you read that if you can, and then if you have any questions, we can discuss those next time. There's light offering prayer, and then there's this advice how to fill the small statue is the last thing as an appendix in this text. So that's there's a link to that in the calendar and on the homepage, Kurukulla homepage under resources. Okay, so that's about it for today, I think. Any questions?
Hi. Yeah, I bought a Shakyamuni Buddha statue recently, but the inside is not hollow. So is there any other way to bless the statue?
It's not hollow?
Yeah.
You got a drill?
No.
It's not hollow, is it? And it's obviously not, what is it? What's it, clay or something?
It's wood.
Oh, it's wood.
Yeah.
Well, then, no, then definitely, at least how big is it? Have you got it?
Yeah, it's over. It's sitting right here. I don't know if you can see it.
Oh, then you could drill a hole in the bottom, and I was joking, but now I'm serious, and roll some mantras and put it, so at least there's something. Even there's some very powerful mantras called the 4 Dharmakaya mantras that Lama Zopa Rinpoche recommends be put in statues. I'll see what I can find out, Trey, and I'll let you know.
Thank you.
But it's better to have at least a few mantras in there rather than it's just like nothing, you know. Okay, so thank you very much. We started with bodhicitta. We read some teachings from Babonka Rinpoche, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, so we've definitely created positive karma, positive potential, merit. So we need to dedicate that. So think, you know, because of this merit, you know, all this positive energy that we've generated over the last couple of hours, because of this merit, think, you know, may I quickly reach enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. So reach enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings means, you know, may I become enlightened so that I can lead all sentient beings to enlightenment. You're doing it for them, not for ourselves. Okay, thank you very much. See you next week.
Thank you.